In the winter of 1932, a curator at the Moscow State Historical Museum opened a storage cabinet labelled Provincial Surveys, unclassified. Inside lay a portfolio of glass negatives dated 1840, depicting monumental architecture across Central Asia. The official catalogue listed them as reconstruction studies, yet the photographs showed structures fully intact, casting sharp shadows across pristine courtyards. One negative bore a handwritten note in faded ink. No restoration required. Original condition. The archivist's name had been scratched away. Beneath the note, a building stood with perfect symmetry, its dome proportioned to harmonics found only in 20th century acoustic design. The curator closed the portfolio quietly. Outside, snow fell in silence. That night, she returned to her desk and wrote a single line in her ledger. These stones were never truly forgotten. The negatives were resealed. They would not be opened again for 40 years. In the early spring of 1840, a team of Russian surveyors reached the outskirts of Samarkand, documenting ruins attributed to local builders of the previous century. Official notes from the Ministry of Internal Affairs described simple rest stations, mosques, and merchant halls, though the sketches stored in the Kazan archive depict structures with far more intricate geometry, perfect circles, octagonal layouts, and domes proportioned to precise harmonics. One sketch, dated March 2nd, shows a massive stone entrance with an inscription that no longer appears on the surviving ruin. A restoration record later claims the inscription weathered away, though the weather of that month was recorded as mild, no sandstorms, only calm air and thin morning mist. A field assistant, Mikhail Rodnov, wrote in his notebook, "These stones ring underfoot, as if hollow." The official report never mentions resonance. Two dates conflict. The survey is labelled 1840, yet the watermark on one blueprint reads 1851. Modern engineers note that its proportions match certain 19th century concert halls almost exactly. At sunset, Rodnov reported a faint hum rising from the earth, but the note ends mid-sentence. By 1857, state publications began framing Central Asian monumental architecture as regional variations of Russian imperial style. The Atlas of Provincial Structures claimed that similarities were coincidental or influenced through trade, yet an engraving dated July 1857 shows a dome chamber in Bukhara with metal ribs forming a pattern nearly identical to those found in Kazan, Odessa, and parts of Ulaanbaatar. The engraving's caption reads, "Local metallurgic flourish," but metallurgists reviewing the plate today note that the depicted alloy, judging by the shade used by the engraver, reflects a non-ferrous metal, common in high-resonance bell casting. A traveller from Marseille, Etienne Vallon, wrote, "Their halls carry sound without echo. You whisper and the domes answer." The government rejected Vallon's account as romantic fiction. Curiously, the Bukhara dome he described was officially dated 1770, yet a map from 1795 shows nothing on that site. Today, its geometric ratios resemble those used in modern acoustical design. At dusk, dust drifted across the dome's threshold as if stirred by something deeper than wind. Restoration logs from Tash Kent, 1872, describe extensive rebuilding using modern materials, though photographs from the same period show scaffolding erected around structures still fully intact. One photograph, dated June 14th, 1872, depicts a stone tower already pristine, its foundation unweathered. A handwritten note on the back reads, "No reconstruction required." The archivist's name has been erased with acid, leaving a faint silhouette of letters. Workmen interviewed decades later recalled the tower differently. "It was not built by us," said an unnamed mason in a 1911 oral transcript. "We were told to carve over the seams, not repair them." Official documents insist the tower was erected in 1873, yet its shadow orientation in the photograph matches a sun position consistent with late 18th century construction. Modern satellite imagery reveals the tower is magnetically aligned, almost perfectly. The act ends here, on a contradiction of stone and silence. If history is written by survivors, who erased the rest? In the winter of 1884, archivists inventorying abandoned military documents in Kazan's old arsenal discovered a stack of blueprints with no listed architect. The sheets bore identical seals, a double-headed eagle overlaid with a symbol resembling an 8-pointed star, an insignia not found in any official imperial register. One blueprint, marked Hall of Convergence, Samarkand section, depicts a structure with internal channels for sound conduction. The notes specify frequencies in cycles per second, terminology not widely used until the early 20th century. A clerk wrote, "These are not ours." The blueprint's ink, tested later in 1956, matches formulations used before 1800, despite the 1884 inventory stamp. Snowfall was heavy the night they were discovered, and some sheets appeared water-stained, yet the watermarks show a date of 1790. Architectural historians note that several modern railway stations mysteriously echo the proportions on these blueprints, though none claim descent from them. The hum motif returns, faint, steady. Outside the archive windows, frost formed patterns resembling the 8-pointed star. By morning, they had melted, leaving only streaks of condensation trailing downward like erased ink. A set of glass negatives surfaced in 1898 in the basement of the Omsk Technical School, showing panoramic views of monumental cities, labelled Tartarian Quarter, Orenburg, 1864. Officials dismissed them as teaching models. The images depict vast colonnades, copper domes, and suspension towers with cables unnervingly thin for 19th century metallurgy. One negative contains a blurred figure standing near a doorway. The caption beneath reads, "Engineer Anonymous." Yet the doorway in the photo no longer exists. Its arch was bricked over sometime before 1880. Weather records show Orenburg suffered storms that damaged metal roofs in 1864, but the photo shadows indicate a clear day, perhaps spring, perhaps autumn. The timestamp etched into one plate contradicts its label by 5 years. A former photography student later claimed, "We were told to lock them away, too modern for their date." Today, certain high-speed rail hubs mirror the same arch curvature. Static creeps into the edges of the negatives, grain like falling ash. In the basement where they were found, temperature readings remained consistently lower than surrounding rooms, even during summer months. The negatives were rehoused in 1923, their original catalogue numbers erased and replaced with sequential filing codes. Reports from 1879 describe a shipment of unidentified mechanical parts delivered to a foundry in Perm. The accompanying manifest lists them as agricultural prototypes, though the surviving sketches show spiraled copper coils, gearless shafts, and hollow spheres of brass, none matching farming equipment. A worker named Savely Antonov wrote one line in his ledger, "When struck, the sphere rings for nearly a minute." The official foundry logs later omit both the spheres and Antonov's entry. Temperature readings on the day of receipt, October 9th, note unusual warmth. One engineer's diary mentions a persistent vibration felt through the floorboards. Modern acousticians reviewing the sketches liken the spheres to experimental resonance chambers used in early wireless research decades later. 2 dates on the manifest conflict. The shipment arrived in 1879, but its export stamp is 1861. Rumours persist that one sphere remains sealed in a warehouse, its hum supposedly still detectable. Workers who handled the spheres reported a sensation of warmth on their palms, though the brass itself measured cool to the touch. The foundry's superintendent noted in a marginal entry, later crossed out, "Not agricultural, purpose unknown." In 1882, a cartographer named Leonid Krupin surveyed Turkestan province and produced a map now housed in the Moscow Geographical Society. It shows an entire district labelled Old Tartarian Quarter, though no such district appears in later maps. The map includes canals aligned to cardinal directions, though the official narrative denies any such waterways existed. Strangely, a later hand modified the map. erasing the canals with pale ink, but ultraviolet analysis reveals the original lines intact beneath. A lightning storm during Krupin's fieldwork reportedly damaged his compass. He wrote, "Needle gone astray near the old stones, as if pulled sideways." That region is still known for magnetic anomalies. The date on the map reads 1882, but the corner watermark states 1870, suggesting reuse of older parchment. Historians dismiss the discrepancy as economy, yet the canal layout mirrors modern irrigation grids installed decades later, almost perfectly. Dust settles over the map's surface, but the erased lines glow faintly under certain light. Krupin's subsequent work shows no further mention of the district, though his private correspondence references architectural remnants of considerable age and sophistication. His final survey, completed in 1885, carefully avoids the region entirely, redirecting routes around unmarked zones that appear on no official register. A series of acoustic studies conducted quietly in 1912 examined old domed chambers throughout Central Asia. The study, archived under experimental reverberation analyses, notes that several domes exhibited harmonic behavior inconsistent with their materials. One site in Kokand, dated officially to 1780, produced a standing wave at 112 Hz when a whisper was uttered beneath the apex. No structural damage was found, despite centuries of wear. A marginal note by researcher A. Shirokov reads, "This is deliberate." Shirokov's notes stop abruptly after May 12th, the date of a sudden dust storm that swept the region. His last measurement lists a frequency matching that of modern resonance-based energy tests. A dome engraving from 1844 depicts internal channels identical to those in the earlier anonymous blueprints. The caption, partly erased, still shows the word Tartarian. Today, certain metro stations replicate similar acoustic properties, though unintentionally. The recurring hum becomes clearer, no longer imagined. In Shirokov's abandoned field kit discovered in 1958, a tuning fork remained perfectly calibrated despite decades of exposure. When struck, it rang at exactly 112 Hz. Evidence of a vast copper-based infrastructure emerges in scattered archives. In 1856, inspectors in Tash Kent recorded underground copper conduits, likely for water, though the pipes showed no joints, seams, or mineral residue inside. Metallurgists who examined them in 1919 found they resonated at precise harmonic intervals when struck. A British traveller, Henry Oldham, visiting in 1862, wrote, "The old city hums like a distant engine." Official accounts claim the conduits were installed during Russian modernization projects, yet import records show no copper shipments to the region prior to 1870. Weather logs describe a dry, windless heat on the day of inspection. Dust clung to the copper surfaces as if magnetized. Two inspection stamps differ. One lists 1856, the other 1848. Modern engineers quietly note that the conduits resemble early attempts at wireless grounding systems. And in several modern cities, Paris, Budapest, New York, copper chambers beneath major buildings follow suspiciously similar layouts. The pattern widens, workers excavating beneath Tash Kent's central square in 1903 reported finding copper networks extending far beyond mapped infrastructure. Their pathways aligned to astronomical coordinates rather than urban planning logic. A peculiar entry in the 1894 St. Petersburg Institute of Mechanics annual report describes an artifact delivered without origin. It consisted of a circular cast iron frame supporting a suspended copper ring. When set in motion, the ring rotated for nearly 3 minutes without external force. A lab assistant wrote, "No steam, no clockwork, yet it turns." The official claim was that it was a gyroscope prototype, though no patent is associated with it. A photograph taken January 7, 1894, shows the ring mid-rotation, yet the exposure time used should have blurred the motion. Still, the ring appears crisp, as if the movement was perfectly stable. The basement, where the device was stored, remained unusually cool. even during a period of mild thaw. A faint vibration was reportedly felt in nearby rooms. The artifact was catalogued under miscellaneous. The builder's name is marked simply as unknown, Tartar. Today, certain magnetic bearing systems echo the same principles. The act ends with the ring still turning in darkness. What else once moved without sound? The device was photographed once more in 1902, then disappeared from inventory records entirely, though maintenance logs show the basement chamber continued to register unexplained temperature fluctuations for years afterward. In 1903, a fire swept through the Central Restoration Bureau of Tash Kent, destroying thousands of architectural records. The fire's origin was officially labelled electrical, though electrical wiring had not yet been installed in that wing. Surviving fragments include part of a blueprint labelled Tartarian Central Hall Convergence Node. The visible portion shows a geometric lattice identical to that found in the Samarkand dome study. Notes scribbled in the margin indicate resonance support architecture. A clerk later recalled, "Some documents were removed before the smoke reached them, but no record exists of where those removed documents went." Weather that night was calm. No wind, no lightning. Yet witnesses describe hearing a low vibration moments before the blaze sparked. 2 date stamps on the salvage blueprint read 1869 and 1901, raising questions about its creation period. Modern seismic engineers note that some earthquake-resistant buildings follow similar lattice principles. Ash falls across the last surviving line of ink. The Bureau was rebuilt within 2 years, but its reorganized archives showed systematic gaps, entire catalogue sections renumbered, whole filing cabinets reassigned to historical miscellany without explanation. A quiet figure named O. Bolinsky, a senior archivist, spent 20 years collecting anomalies related to Central Asian structures. His private journal, discovered after his death in 1917, lists dozens of buildings whose origins contradict official records. His final entry, dated April 3rd, documents a visit to an abandoned sub-chamber beneath Samarkand's Registan Square. He describes metal ribs embedded in stone, identical to those on the anonymous 19th century blueprints. When he tapped one rib with his pen, it emitted a tone clear as a tuning fork. "This was built with purpose," he wrote. Bolinsky's journal ends abruptly. No further entries follow, though a loose sheet tucked into the back reads simply, "They built beautifully because beauty was function." Outside that day, thin fog rolled across the square, despite dry forecasts. His watch stopped at 11:14, yet the city clock tower recorded 11:27 at the same moment. Today, ground-penetrating surveys show unexplained cavities beneath the square. The silence around Bolinsky grows heavier. His journal passed through 3 private collections before reaching the Moscow archives in 1964, each owner noting the same peculiarity. The final pages remained warm to the touch, as if recently handled, regardless of storage conditions. By 1920, mentions of Tartarian architecture had faded from academic texts, surveys were rewritten, photographs relabeled, blueprints redated. The surviving structures were reassigned new histories, rebuilt, repurposed, or simply ignored, yet the traces remain. A metal lattice beneath a modern bank in Tash Kent hums faintly when struck. A sealed chamber under Orenburg still aligns magnetically. Several domes across Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Russia reproduce harmonic ratios seen nowhere else in world architecture. And in the archives of St. Petersburg, a photograph from 1840 still shows a building officially completed decades later. One restoration student wrote in 1964, "These stones do not behave like ruins, they behave like survivors." The recurring sound motif, hum, resonance, vibration, threads back through every structure, like a forgotten language spoken in acoustics. 2 dates remain unresolved in countless documents. 2 shadows fall where only one building stands. 2 histories compete, one official, one erased. The camera lingers on a dome at dusk. A breeze moves, dust rises. Something beneath the stone answers with the faintest echo. The archives remain open, their catalogues incomplete, their gaps speaking louder than any inscription. And in the quiet moments between research and record, when archivists work alone beneath flickering lamps, some report hearing it still, that distant, persistent hum, like a city breathing beneath the earth.